Good morning, and in today's lecture class, we'll discuss another topic. And today's topic of discussion is zoonosis. So, the word zoonosis, as you can see, what it derives from the Greek word zoon and nosos. Zoon refers to animals, and nosos means disease. However, Rudolf Virchow actually defined what zoonosis is, and he described it as all the diseases which are transmitted from animals to human beings. Thereafter, WHO in 1959 defined exactly what zoonosis are. And according to WHO, these are those diseases and infections which are naturally transmitted between vertebrate animals and human beings. Okay, there are many diseases which can affect human beings in which animals are involved directly or indirectly. Now, let us look at the history of zoonosis. In the prehistoric times, when the evidence shows that human beings were more of the gatherers and the hunters, these evidence, scientific evidences shows. So, archaeological evidences have showed that even in the prehistoric times, human beings were predominantly affected with the parasitic, viral, or bacterial diseases. Moving on to the ancient civilizations like the Roman or Egyptian civilizations, at this point of time, human beings started domesticating animals, and there was start of what is the agriculture or the agrarian economy. And because of the domestication of animals, there were evidences of many other diseases, including anthrax and rabies, which were directly transmitted from animals to human beings. Furthermore, if we look at the medieval and the Renaissance period, in which cities and towns started to develop, more and more diseases associated with animals were seen. Perhaps the most important of them was the plague epidemic, also called as the Black Death. As you can see, this is the picture of called as the plague doctor. All the apparatus was owned by the doctors at that point of time with the presumption of protecting them from the disease. Nevertheless, moving on to the early modern period, in this early modern period, as you can see, the European civilization started colonizing other countries and other continents. And because of this colonization, two very important things happened. First was the transmission of diseases from one continent to other, and the second was invasion into the native regions. Hence, human beings were further exposed to many other types of diseases which were previously unknown. Moving on to the next period of medical development in the 19th and the earlier 20th century, the diseases now, with the advent of the microbiology and advent of vaccination, more therapeutic and diagnostic methods were accessible to the human beings. Hence, now we can actually diagnose, treat, and also prevent these diseases. Moving on to the mid to the late 20th century, that is the bygone century, we have seen many diseases which have come from the animal world and have actually implicated the health ecosystem of human beings to a very great extent. Perhaps the most important is HIV. Initially, HIV was seen only in the simian monkeys and it was called as the simian immune deficiency virus. From there on, the virus moved on to the human population, and till today, we are suffering from the HIV pandemic. Similarly, another virus which was earlier seen only in the animals and started to break into the human chain of transmission is Ebola virus. You might have heard even about the Ebola virus outbreaks in Africa. Now, coming to the 21st century, the 21st century further gave another dimension of the understanding of zoonotic diseases. The initial disease that was praised was known as the SARS or severe acute respiratory disease virus. This virus was originally seen in the bats, then it was seen to affect the birds, and then it spilled into the human beings and causing epidemic. Few years later, another similar kind of virus was seen. It was known as the MERS virus or Middle East Respiratory Virus. And now, few years back, we have also seen another pandemic by the SARS-CoV-2, which caused COVID-19. Okay, so all these viruses, pathogens, they can be traced to some vertebrate or invertebrate animals. Okay, so hence, as of today, the clear-cut demarcation of what zoonosis is and what is not has become more and more thin. Now, another important aspect you have to realize that these diseases are no longer restricted to a particular geographical area, region, or a country because of the advances in the uh, economic, the civilization and advancement. A disease from one part of the world now spreads very rapidly to another part of the world. I think you have all realized how the COVID pandemic spread from China and then to all of the world in a matter of 2 to 3 months. Hence, today we need to realize that these problems are no longer a problem of particular country or region, rather an international problem. Another important aspect is with the development of the human civilization, more and more unexplored areas are being explored, more lands are undergoing deforestations, there is mobilization of the wildlife population, and also there is an intense culture change, climate change. So the climate change also drives the migration of the pathogen from the wildlife and human beings come in contact. So as we progress further on, more and more different types of diseases which were previously unknown is expected to spill into the human population. Now let us classify zoonosis. Initially, we can easily classify based on the pathogen. Either it's a bacterial pathogen or a viral, parasitic, mycotic means fungal pathogen, whether it's a rickettsial or a protozoal disease. Another way of classifying is by the mode of transmission. Now, in this, first is the direct zoonosis. In direct zoonosis, there is a host A and host B. The transmission happens directly from host A to host B. A very good example would be that of rabies infection. A rabid dog, if it bites a human being, there is direct transmission. Latent zoonosis is called when the transmission occurs from one host to the other, but there is an intermediate host. Whereas metazoonosis is when the two hosts are affected, but there is an intermediate host or a vector. Similar example would be a plague. It affects, say, rats, and then there is an invertebrate host, the fleas. So transmission goes on from one rat to another, and fleas are involved. Sometimes human beings are affected by the same route. Another would be saprozoonosis. Sapro means, I think you have heard about saprophytes, organisms which can derive nutrient from the environment. So saprophytic zoonosis means all the infections which a human being can acquire from the environment. For example, few fungal diseases like aspergillosis, histoplasmosis. Like histoplasmosis is very commonly associated with bat or bird droppings. So these droppings are found in the environment where, for example, like bats, they live in the cave. So if a human being gains access into the cave, he may inhale the bat droppings from that cave. So there is not direct transmission, but from the environment. That is called as saprozoonosis. Another is called as cyclozoonosis. Cyclozoonosis means the transmission is going on between one type of host to another type of host. And there might be a possible additional host which may or may not be confirmed. Again, we can also classify the zoonosis based on the reservoir or the source, like zooanthroponosis. Now, zooanthroponosis means all the diseases which are transmitted from animals to human beings. Similarly, some diseases are also transmitted in the other way around, that is, from human beings to animals, like diphtheria. Diphtheria can be transmitted from human beings to, some, say, a domesticated cat or domesticated dog or even cows. Similarly, amphizoonosis are those diseases which can easily transmit from animals to human beings and vice versa. Now, why this topic has become more and more relevant today? The more years have gone by in the last 20th century, more number of zoonotic diseases have been identified, and it is predicted that this is going to increase furthermore. So, for that, we need to look at what are the changes that has happened over these many years. Now, these changes would include, first is the changes in the ecology. This is predominantly a man-made problem because of the, say, deforestations, loss of biodiversity, invasion or penetration of human activities into previously unknown ecological habitats, and thereby the pathogen gets transmitted from them to the other human population. Another important aspect is handling of animals and animal byproducts. Because of the human need, animals are now more and more cultivated in farms. The requirement of animal products, from food to clothing to beauty products, have increased over the last 100 years. Hence, more and more animals and animal byproducts are handled, and they are also transported because of the trading. Hence, the chances and exposure are even higher as of today. Another important aspect would be the increased movement of human beings. Now, in today's culture, there are no more explorers. Earlier, majority of the people used to be restricted in their own country or region. Today, a large population is going on tourism, pilgrimage. Uh, I think even in many countries, they many people go for exploration in jungles, caves for recreational activities. Hence, the exposure to the normal human population has even increased. And another important aspect is the changes in the density of the animal population. Now, this is predominantly due to the deforestation. As more and more trees have been cut, the sizes of the jungles and forests have reduced. Hence, a lot more animals are now concentrated some particular areas. This results in transmission of many diseases which were restricted to some or single species. Now the pathogen can easily cross the species barrier. And when a particular pathogen acquires the ability to transcend the species barrier, the pathogen becomes more capable to transcend the human and animal species barrier and infect human beings. চলবে না নাকি এটা? আচ্ছা, okay. Now, coming to the Indian context, well, in India, zoonotic diseases have been uh, perhaps being neglected for many years. But the impact of zoonotic diseases in India have been very significant. Right from, say, rabies infection, still very prominent in India. There have been outbreaks of plague. Even very recently, there was a plague outbreak in the western half of the country. Other diseases, including typhus fever and even Japanese encephalitis. If you are aware, the eastern region of the India is very much prone for Japanese encephalitis. Hence, the government of India has also started a program for monitoring of the zoonotic diseases. Now, keeping in mind of the Indian context, two very important part that you have to understand is that the size of the population in India is very high. I'm talking about the human population. Furthermore, because of the predominant agriculture based economy, domesticated animals are very large in number. Even further complicating fact is that many forest and wildlife reserves are there in India. Hence, there is a high probability of transmission of diseases both from wildlife, domesticated, and human population. Another very complicated situation, especially in India, is the lack of coordination or complete discoordination between the understanding of these diseases between doctors, veterinary doctors, and epidemiologists. Hence, many a times a doctor may fail to recognize a zoonotic disease in a human being. Vice versa, a veterinarian may miss a human disease in an animal. So these things are to be addressed, and the government of India has also formed a program for that. Now, okay, just 2 points I have forgotten. Two very important cause of transmission of diseases from one part of the world to other part is transmission of the vectors of the disease from one part. Very commonly, mosquitoes are transmitted from one part of the world to the other via aircrafts or ships. Hence, they can also carry the pathogen along with them. Similarly, some of the diseases have come in contact with human beings because of, say, customary or sometimes bizarre customs. I think you might be aware in some regions, some people have, uh, I would say, bizarre food or eating habits. So, any pathogen which, for example, I have shown the picture of octopus. Some people are eating octopus that are not properly cooked. So, any pathogen that is prevalent in the marine ecosystem can gain access to the human beings. So, these are also factors which cause. Now, please look at this picture. So, this picture shows how a particular pathogen may evolve from being an animal pathogen to human pathogen. So it probably goes through the 5 stages. In the first stage, the pathogen is only causing disease in animals. In the second stage, the pathogen causes the disease predominantly in animals, sometimes may spill because of mode of transmission to human beings. However, transmission from one human being to another human being are very rare. In the third stage of the disease, we can see that the same pathogen cause diseases in animals predominantly, but can also spill to human beings and transmit from one human being to other. Furthermore, slowly we can see at during stage 4, the pathogen forms two different cycles. One cycle is known as the sylvatic cycle, that is the wild cycle, another is the urban cycle. Okay, a very good example would be that of dengue virus. There is a wild cycle that is going on in the forest, and there is an urban cycle that goes on within the human beings. And finally, in stage 5, the pathogen loses the ability to cause disease in animals and becomes a sole human pathogen. So, this is how a pathogen which was initially animal restricted pathogen evolves to being a human pathogen. Okay. This is the comprehensive list of the important zoonotic diseases that you must be aware of. These diseases include brucellosis, Q fever, leptospirosis, bovine tuberculosis, then rickettsiosis, anaplasmosis, Lyme's disease, borreliosis, bartonellosis, plague, tularemia, anthrax, salmonellosis, campylobacteriosis, rabies, leishmaniasis, not visceral leishmaniasis, echinococcosis, toxoplasmosis, tiniasis, cysticercosis, arboviral diseases, Crimean Congo fever, Zika virus, listeriosis, and Ebola viruses. However, this is not the full and final list. What I have highlighted are the important zoonotic disease. Now, another very important part is what is known as One Health. Now, what is One Health? Now, if you have understood to what I have told till now, you must have understood the basic problem is the disturbance of the ecological balance on earth is the main problem. That is the reason why WHO has proposed the program called One Health. The One Health targets human population, animals, and environment. So, if we only try to protect human beings with treatment options or preventive actions, we will not be able to stop the transmission of disease from animals. Similarly, we have to ensure that the ecological balance is maintained. And furthermore, a very important aspect, especially in domesticated animals, is the use of antimicrobial agents. Now, human population is growing day by day, so the need of food is also growing. And to satisfy the demand of the human hunger, animal food is being produced in an industrial basis. And for this industry to survive and supply the required food, animals are grown at a much faster rate, and many medications are being given so that these animals may survive, become healthy, and the food production increases. A very important aspect of those medication is use of antibiotics in animals. Today, these antibiotics are used even in healthy animals so that they do not in a prophylactic or a metaphylaxis manner. Problem is that when you use antimicrobial agents in these animals will transmit these uh, antibiotics through their fecal matter and urines into the environment. So any organism or a pathogen which is present in the environment will get exposed to higher quantity of antibiotics in the environment itself. Hence, when we as doctors see patients with infections of these organisms, we find these organisms are resistant to commonly all antimicrobial agents that we use for treatment. Hence, multi-drug or pan-drug resistant organisms are coming up more and more. So, if this is the scenario, how we need to circumvent? WHO, through many trials and studies, have established and the cause of antimicrobial resistance as two main important causes. First is the misuse of antibiotics and overuse of antibiotics. When I say misuse means use of improper antibiotics, and overuse means use of antibiotics when not required. And this phenomenon is occurring not only with human beings but also in the veterinary sciences. So hence all these factors increases the antimicrobial resistance, and the adverse outcome is affecting human population the most. So WHO has given many suggestions, recommendations to show that these problems can be controlled. Now, one more very important thing that you need to understand that when we are trying to implement these sort of things like the policies of One Health and the WHO, this is not restricted to a particular geographical area or a particular country. It is an international issue. So, international cooperation is very important because in today's geopolitical scenario, control of the human population is possible, but control of animal population is not possible by the geographical boundaries of the countries. Animals like birds, fishes, cattle, they will move from one place to another. Hence, if a particular country attains very high degree of control of use of say antibiotics in animal population, it will not affect very much. All the countries need to work together. So is what should be done in India. The last part is the World Zoonotic Day is celebrated as the 6th of July. That is the day in which Louis Pasteur first made vaccine. Okay.